Often I get asked what the best time for wildlife photography is. Now there are a number of factors to consider, and more often than not, I come to the same conclusion. It has to be the rainy or green season. In this video, I'm going to go through some of the pros and cons of safaris in the wet season, when the rainy seasons are in different parts of Africa, some of my favorite destinations for photography in the green season, and a few tips of getting really interesting green season images in each of my favorite destinations. I'm Darren, and I'm a photo safari guide and host with C4 Photo Safaris. To begin, the timing of the green season in Africa differs across various regions due to the vast size. In the majority of southern Africa, the rainy season typically occurs between October and March. However, in East Africa, the pattern is slightly different and is characterized by short rains from October to December and long range from March to May. The short rain times are generally thunder showers, while the long rains are more constant and saturating. Now that we know when the green seasons are, what are the pros and cons of a green season safari? Let's start with some of the cons. In the wet season, the presence of wildlife is sometimes not as noticeable compared to the dry season. However, there are exceptions to this trend, which I will discuss later in the video. The limited sightings of wildlife during this period can be attributed to the increased water levels in the smaller, less prominent wetlands located apart from the larger ones. Particularly in South Africa during the rainy season, the vegetation can become dense, making it a challenge observing wildlife. Nonetheless, there are advantages to capturing photographs of wildlife in these thick surroundings. When you do come across a subject amidst the lush and dense environment, the outcomes can be breathtaking. Another con of the rainy season is that some areas and lodges become inaccessible. This may be because the lodge is situated in a wetland area, like for instance Busanga Plains in the Kafue National Park in Zambia. The area is closed from November to May because the entire 700 square kilometer plains area becomes a huge floodplain. The third and last con is that, well, there's a pretty good chance you're going to get wet. Now the pros most definitely outweigh the cons on a green season safari. There are a few reasons to get excited about it. Most of the parks go quiet during the green season. In South Africa, numerous private reserves are efficiently managed, avoiding the overwhelming presence of safari vehicles competing for a prime spot to observe big cats. Unfortunately, this is a common issue in some of the East African parks. However, during the green season periods, the masses just aren't there. And so you get these parks very much to yourself. Not to mention that the lodges often lower their prices substantially, which lowers the cost of your safari. This is also the time that these parks are at their most beautiful. The flowers are out, the grass is green, and the skies are dramatic, particularly during the shorter rain periods in East Africa in the beginning of the season in Southern Africa, when the rains are mostly in thunderstorms. As a result, the clouds that form are cumulonimbus clouds that build up with intensity as it gets later in the afternoon. These clouds make for very dramatic photography. The bird life is exceptional and makes for the best bird photography. It's during the rainy season that a host of migratory species make their way to these parks, taking advantage of all the bounty that comes out when the conditions are in their prime. There's an eruption of insects and amphibians that draw the birds in to breed and feed. Some migrate all the way from Siberia to South Africa. So bird numbers and species increase in the green season. It is also the time that birds breed, meaning that a number of species also change their plumage to attract members of the opposite sex, and so birds that are usually brown change into their best for the season, and to add to this, they also bring out their best dance move in their courtship displays. If you're lucky enough to witness this, it makes for some spectacular photography, and your chances of finding nesting birds are also really good, allowing for some great behavioral photography. This is also the season that there's a glut of babies in the bush. A number of species have selected lambing or calving seasons. So impala, warthog, springbuck are just a few examples of this. They all birth during the early or short rain periods, so the chance of getting interesting interaction shots are there, as well as the possibility of predation on the youngsters. Here are some of my favorite destinations in the green season. The Kgalagadi. This is a semi-arid region in South Africa and Botswana, bordering on Namibia to the west of the Transfrontier Park. The average rainfall here is between 150 and 300 millimeters a year. So green is kind of relative. However, you do get some interesting opportunities in the rain season here. The springbucks have their lambs and move into the ancient riverbeds where the grass is greener because of a higher water table in the riverbeds. The flowers spring to life in the dunes above the riverbeds. The grasses take advantage of the rains and their inflorescence stand ready to disperse seeds. This makes for really good backlighting images because the grasses don't get very tall in the Kgalagadi. All the critters in the Kgalagadi are out and about and taking advantage of the short-lived time of plenty. You'll possibly notice plenty of insects and reptiles are active, adding to the excellent sightings of larger mammals. Some tips for photographing the Kgalagadi in the wet season. The backlighting is the food for a photographer in the Kgalagadi. The light is incredible no matter what the season, so be prepared to look for a subject in the light. The added dynamic of the grasses adds to the already incredible lighting. Backlighting for black and white images also works really well here. Watch the pale chanting goshawks carefully. These are the most abundant birds of prey in the Kgalagadi, and they really often produce some spectacular photographic moments, harassing larger reptiles and often taking advantage of the increased reptile activity, and aren't shy to hunt a lizard or a snake right in front of you. Last tip for the Kgalagadi: watch the trees for Cape cobras, as they often take to the trees, particularly looking to try and get to the sociable weaver nests looking for chicks. Often the erratic behavior and constant chittering of the weavers is an indication that this may be happening. My second favorite green season destination, the Greater Kruger National Park. It's also a semi-arid park, but in the east of South Africa, bordering on Mozambique. The average rainfall is between 400 and 700 millimeters. Most of the organized safaris here, though, take place on the western boundary in the Sabi Sands and Timbavati game reserves, which are higher rainfall areas. So from December to March, when the majority of the rainfall happens, this results in very green and very lush vegetation. The impalas drop their lambs from early November, and it results in an abundance of lambs, which predators take advantage of. Many small pools form all over the place, giving the frogs place to breed. African bullfrogs are particularly common and feed plenty of birds. Storks move away from the rivers and into the plains areas to take advantage of this during the seasonal floods. The green season in the Greater Kruger National Park has a beautiful golden hour, which also makes all the colors extremely vibrant. Some tips for photographing in the Greater Kruger National Park in the green season. The contrasts of tawny cats with green makes for beautiful images. Try shooting through vegetation with a low aperture or a low f number to blur the foreground and frame these predators in the green. Look for some of the smaller subjects like frogs around the pools of water and get down really low for a shallow depth of field. These animals are only active for a very short period of the year, so take advantage of this. The region attracts a lot of migratory species of bird. So there are really good opportunities for species like woodland kingfishers with gorgeous green backgrounds. And there are plenty of nesting species. For instance, the hornbills. So keep an eye on the hornbills and check to see if they're moving to one particular dead tree. You'll often be able to get some really nice images of these birds flying back and forth with all sorts of prey in their bills. Then we have the beautiful place that I'm coming to you from today, Mashatu Game Reserve. Mashatu is in the Limpopo Valley in Botswana, on the border with Zimbabwe and South Africa. In the green season, the dominant mopani shrubs spring to life and produce the most incredible shades of green. This, however, is the valley of the predators, in particular leopards. And the sight of leopards with lush green backgrounds is a photographer's dream. Mashatu is particularly good for summer photography because it's not very thick to start with and the grass remains short throughout the green season. So the backgrounds and foregrounds are green and colourful, but also clean. What more could a photographer ask for? Some tips for photographing Mashatu in the green season. When driving around, use the dry riverbeds to get good perspectives, particularly for leopards as they like to lie on the steep banks. You'll be photographing up and most likely against a beautiful green background. Well, I do hope that you found this video useful and that you may feel excited about planning a green season safari. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button because there's plenty more to come from us here at C4 Photo Safaris. If you would like to ask me a question on green season safaris, please feel free to drop a comment and I'll answer all your questions. Until my next video, enjoy your photography.